Welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're going to talk about something kind of weird. A company that makes these huge autonomous trucks, but swears up and down they are not a car company. Nope, they say they're building the physical internet. So what in the world does that even mean? Let's get into it.
All right, so let's start with a quote straight from their own engineering team. This really frames the whole puzzle we're going to unpack today. Infrastructure protocol. I mean, that's a pretty bold thing for a truck maker to say, right? So what does it actually mean when you stop making cars and start making, well, a protocol?
Yeah, exactly. What does an infrastructure protocol on wheels actually do? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we've got to rewind the clock a bit, back to early 2025. They made a few key decisions that just completely changed the game for them.
Okay, so here's their first big move, their strategic pivot. And honestly, it was pretty dramatic. Their first step, they just walked away from the whole consumer EV thing. You know, the model everyone else is chasing. They decided, nah, we're going to go solve a completely different set of problems.
And you can see how methodical this was when you look at their timeline. It's not random. In the first half of the year, they dropped the consumer model. By Q3, they're demonstrating this infinite loop thing. We'll get to that. And then, by the end of the year, they pull the curtain back on some serious defense capabilities. So yeah, this was no accident. This was a plan, and a really calculated one at that.
So you see, this wasn't just a mission statement change. They literally redesigned everything. You got to forget about smooth highways and big cities. They started building for these rugged rural environments. They called them RIOS campuses. We're talking hardened suspension, no steering wheels, because who needs them when there's no driver, right? The whole point became about one thing, moving essential stuff securely.
So that brings us to their next big puzzle piece, energy. Think about it. How in the world are you supposed to run a whole fleet of electric vehicles somewhere with 0 charging stations? Like literally, in the middle of nowhere.
Well, they came up with something they call the infinite loop. And it's kind of brilliant, actually. They made a totally closed, self-sustaining system. It's like the machine is literally fetching its own food. The truck goes out, grabs some biomass, think organic waste, hauls it to a generator, that generator makes power, and, you guessed it, that power recharges the truck. It's just a perfect little circle, tailor-made for off-grid spots.
And here's how it works in practice with their partner Agra Energy. The truck, which they call the mule, brings biomass to the generator. The generator turns it into power for the local, let's call it a node. And then the mule just plugs right back into the very thing it just fed. It's this perfect symbiotic relationship. The truck isn't just using the power grid, it's actually part of the power plant's supply chain. Wild.
And look, this wasn't just some concept on a whiteboard. They actually did it. They took it to one of the harshest places you can imagine, Kabong, Uganda. We're talking 110-degree heat. They had 50 of these rovers running around, hauling tons of biomass with 0 downtime. And the craziest part? Not a single human driver in sight.
Okay, so they figured out infinite energy. Check. The next problem on the list? Security. How do you make sure the stuff you're moving is safe? Well, their solution was to completely rethink what a package even is. And they actually borrowed the idea from the internet.
Yeah, this quote is a huge clue to their whole philosophy. They basically said, hey, physical stuff, it's just a packet of data. Food, medicine, you name it. It's all just a packet moving through their network, which they call the cognitive mesh. So think about how the internet works, right? It breaks up an email or a video into tiny data packets and sends them along. Kurb Kars is doing the exact same thing, but for actual physical things.
So you might be asking, how do you secure a physical packet? Well, their answer is physics. It's called radio frequency fingerprinting. Forget about passwords or digital keys. Those can be hacked, right? Instead, their trucks read the totally unique, impossible-to-clone radio fingerprint of a device, so your phone itself becomes the key. Not an app on your phone, but the physical phone. And you can't hack physics. And this is a really fundamental shift. With digital security, you have to trust that a password is safe. You have to trust the system. But with RFF, it's a zero-trust model. The system doesn't need to trust anything. It just checks the unique physical signature of your device. It's either a match or it's not. That's how they can claim to have built a logistics network that's basically impossible to spoof.
But, just securing the cargo from somebody popping the lock, that wasn't enough for them. The whole network itself had to be tough, had to be resilient. So they took it another step further. They turned their entire fleet of trucks into a distributed defense network.
What they did was apply a military concept, C4I. That's command, control, communications, computers, and intelligence. In simple terms, every single truck isn't just a truck anymore. It's also a sensor. It's a listening post. And they're all constantly talking to each other, sharing data, building this complete picture of what's happening around them in that cognitive mesh.
So what does that do? Well, let's say one truck runs into a GPS jammer. That's a huge problem for autonomous vehicles. It doesn't just panic. Nope. It uses physics to figure out exactly where that jammer is and instantly tells the entire fleet. Potholes, intruders, anything. The whole swarm learns at the same time and adapts. It's a swarm defense.
Okay, let's take a breath. So we've got infinite energy, we've got unhackable physics-based security, and we have a self-defending grid of trucks. That's a lot of tech. But what do you actually do with it? What's a real-world problem this whole thing can solve?
Well, they set their sights on an $11.2 billion industry, non-emergency medical transportation, or NEMT. Now, this is the service that gets people who can't drive to really critical appointments. Think dialysis, chemo, it's life or death stuff. And this industry is an absolute mess, especially in rural areas, because of two big things: massive billing fraud and a chronic shortage of drivers. And those just happen to be the exact problems Kurb Kars built their entire system to solve.
And this is where it all just clicks into place. You see how their tech stack just perfectly lines up with the problems. The billing fraud, that ghost ride problem, solved. Their RFF tech gives undeniable proof of presence. The rural driver shortage? Well, their autonomous trucks don't need drivers, and with the infinite loop, they can go anywhere. And patients being late or missing appointments? The C4I network treats them like high-value assets and routes them with military precision.
This is really the key. They literally reclassified a human patient as a high-value packet. Now, that might sound cold, but think about what it means in their system. A patient going to dialysis gets the same priority, the same encryption, the same guarantees as a piece of critical military data. The network will do everything in its power to make sure that packet arrives safely and on time. And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. Kurb Kars isn't a car company. It makes sense now, right? They're the muscle of something bigger. They are the physical internet protocol, the part that actually moves the essential packets, the food, the energy, the people that let a community survive and thrive, especially a community that's disconnected from the main grid. And their motto says it all. We move the things that matter. It's so simple, but it perfectly sums up that change in focus. It was never about the truck. It was always about what the truck could do. Reliably move the things that are absolutely critical for life. So that's what I want to leave you with. They use this whole system for medical transport. But what happens when logistics aren't just trucks on a road, but a secure, self-powering, intelligent infrastructure? What else can be delivered? What other broken systems could we rebuild if the movement of physical stuff became as reliable as the internet itself? It's a pretty big question.